What I've realized is here in America, we definitely just kind of write things off that are spiritual warfare more than other places because we just don't have a category for it. The concept of spiritual warfare was not new to me, but it actually happening to me in such real way that was. I didn't want to go there originally. I wanted to go to Serbia, but after a series of events, it just became evident that God was not calling me to Serbia. I remember just telling the people interviewing me, like, hey, I want to go to the trenches. These are my choices, and I feel like Montreal would be too easy. French was my native language. That's what they spoke, and I just really wanted to go somewhere where I would feel challenged. I was just having this daily struggle of, I don't want to be here. I don't think I'm called to be here. This isn't hard. One day, we're out and we're doing door-to-door evangelism. And every single door that we knocked on, every single person that we tried to tell them about the gospel, every single one of them said no. I just remember after like the third no, feeling even more defeated and harboring that bitterness even more, like just being like, man, God, like this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, what am I here for? On our way back, we took metros from the country to the city, and I still remember I had both my headphones in and I was listening to Will Reagan, some song by then. But what happened was this lady said my name. I don't know who she was. I've never met her. And I just kind of looked her direction and she said my name again. And in French, she asked me, is your name written in the blameless book of life? And I looked back at her and I was like, yes. And she said, so you believe you're going to paradise? And I, thinking this was my opportunity to share, I told her I definitely believed I was going to heaven and tried to proceed to share the gospel with her. And she cut me off and she was like, well, you're not. She just started talking and calling me out by real sins that were pertinent to what was happening in my life, my family's life, and people around me, pretty honestly. I had a family member going through really deep, dark depression, and she brought up that family member and proceeds to talk to my friend and trying to tell her that I'm not going to heaven and that I needed to heed her instruction because God told her I was going to hell and I was not a believer, I wasn't a Christian, that I didn't even want to be there, which was a thought I hadn't told anyone. Other people were trying to kind of like de-escalate the situation because she started to move towards me and she was kind of going side to side like, why are you afraid? I was scared. I got stuck, like physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually in that moment. We ended up getting off the metro a couple stops earlier, and we had other students there too who asked me like, hey, what happened? And I told them the truth, and I dealt with what I thought was going to be shame in that moment. It was actually cool to see them kind of rally behind me and just speak the truths of the gospel to me when I couldn't speak it to myself and I wasn't in a mindset where I wanted to really hear it. I remember thinking, man, God, like, I don't know right now if you're good. I don't feel that you're good, but I see your goodness and I see it through your people. And after a couple conversations after that with some people on the team, I realized, man, the enemy does not like it when God's people are doing God's work. I got to be the mouthpiece to help other people share the gospel because no one else could really speak French that well. Why would the enemy not want to attack that? Before that experience, I, to be honest, on a daily would struggle with the idea of like, am I going to heaven? After really being in a space where someone called me out in that way and saying like, hey, you're not, I was able to run back to the gospel and see that I bring nothing but my sin and no good comes from me when it comes to the gospel. But because Jesus was so good to us, because he chose the cross on our behalf, we get to walk out of these hardships into his light, into his love, into community where we are bought, accepted, and made whole. spiritual warfare is real and it happens. And when it does and it causes fear, turn to the gospel, turn to community with Christ. It is so doable because you have his people, you have his word, you have the Holy Spirit inside of you to help you continuously fight those doubts. God, through the Holy Spirit, has helped me see like that He is so much bigger than the realms of evil.